Welcome to another episode of Hat Collecting, the multi-passionate experience. This month for July, which is Disability Pride Month, I've been doing a special mini-series with a variety of disabled friends and peers that I know and talking about their disabilities, their experiences, and what we can learn from them. I am your host, Lacey Arnholz. My pronouns are she and they. I am a white, early 40s, feminine presenting person with long brown hair, and I'm wearing black headphones and a pink shirt. And I'm joined today by my friend, who will introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Victoria Urquhart. I use she, her pronouns. I am a feminine presenting person with, I am Caucasian with reddish brown hair. I'm currently wearing a sunny yellow button-down shirt with white polka dots. And I'm coming to you from my partner's living room.
Yes, I'm coming from an undisclosed location.
The mystery.
Yes. I have a set of questions that I've been asking or using as the guide rails, I guess. And sometimes we have gone in past episodes, sometimes we've gone off and I've asked other questions, but this is where we start and we see where it goes. But the first question, why we're here in the first place, what disability or disabilities, plural, do you personally experience that you would like to talk about today?
Yeah, I mean, I am AuDHD, so that's ADHD autistic. Happy to talk about that today. Also happy to talk a little bit about long COVID as a chronic illness and how we navigate spaces with that.
Excellent. Yes, we are both AuDHD, and I have been kind of following your journey through Facebook primarily of the very unfortunate experiences that you've been having with the medical system and getting various diagnoses. And we have talked, I spoke to past guest Yolanda Bonnell about accessibility and disability justice in the theater space, which is something that I also know that you have some experience with. So we could talk about each of those things. But if I can get you to do one more TED Talk, I
Please.
do want to just give you a chance to speak to this because I mentioned it before. So I recently attended a play reading that you led and facilitated, and I was very impressed and admiring of the lengths at which you went to try and be inclusive and supportive. And I think we talked briefly about that kind of thing in the broader theater space, but I'm curious to ask you now, from what you have seen, and I know you could probably mostly only speak to maybe just here in Toronto or even just maybe Canada, but what are you seeing in terms of those sorts of accommodations and considerations being made more often going forward and more broadly for more people?
That's a great question. So I should posit that that story and that exploration of that story, there's a lot that is being developed with that because in terms of access that is provided for neurodivergence and I mean, there's only so much that a theater, like a company, can budget for access. And that's also why there's amazing advocates and artists out there who are advocating for access-centered infrastructure. And I tell the stories that I do in that particular story because in the full scale of that story, we're not just going to have, a relaxed performance of the show. In that version, in that story, it is advocating for and providing frameworks for multiple versions of relaxed performances. Because for myself, I what a lot of people don't know, like when we look at when we look at the form of autism, let alone AuDHD, that's in mainstream media and discussion, a lot of the time we see a cis white dude who is sensory avoidant, and maybe verbal, maybe nonverbal, struggles with social cues, so we should give him space. Aside from the problematic intersecting issues of that with cis white dudes getting a lot of space in general, let's introduce some more people who are not cis white dudes, please, with this particular identity. What, did I just make that commentary? Aside from that, people don't realize that there's multiple forms of autism. We talk about autism is a spectrum, and like a lot of people don't know the radial dial kind of thing, and a lot of people don't know how all of that works. But the reason why my autism was missed for so long, aside from the fact that I'm pretty sure it's in my family for a very long time, and I'm not going to go diagnosing people because that's also ableist. An internalized ableism. I am sensory indulgent. There are a lot of people who have autism, are autistic, I should say, and are sensory avoidant, and can't. There are several sensory experiences that just cannot be tolerated, and that's valid. And there is the other. People don't realize that there is the other side of that scale, and like, especially as an AuDHD person, I need a certain amount of stimulation in order to engage a lot of the time. I was the kid who was like going up to the huge booming speakers and like pressing my ear against it because I loved the sensation that it had on my eardrum. It was way too loud, and I gained a bit of hearing loss from that. And also, like, I was sensory seeking all the time. That doesn't mean that I am sensory seeking all the time. And there are times where the sensory is way too much, and it will fluctuate based on, burnout and all of the things. And there is such a thing as sensory euphoria. And a lot of the time we talk about sensory dysphoria, but what about sensory euphoria? And there are ways to engage that so that there can be a night of a relaxed performance where, sure, the lights are up in the audience and we're not seeing a lot of dramatic light flashes, because also some lighting, some work with lights can make people nauseous, myself included. As well as there's a version where there is maybe extra lighting, or there's a version like that's why, like, there's several scenes within a kitchen within my play. I guess I should plug my play at some point. I will.
If you want to.
That it's the thing that I just finished working on, and I will continue to work on because it's in its draft and workshop stages. But that is meant to engage an actual kitchen so that, the smells are there to engage. There's a version, there's a version where there is a lot of bass so that people can feel that. Because these are ways that we hold our audiences too. And for myself, I've had multiple experiences where I go to see a piece of theater. Actually, a friend of mine had asked me about access for, because I, he's a deaf artist, and we went to, I don't even know if it was actually called a relaxed performance. It was one of the performances that included captioning, for that translation for hearing audiences, which I'm all about. Like, I am all about that. You don't need to translate for us. So if there's a specific night that we go to for that translation, that's okay. And also, like, you don't have to do, like, I love that. Because, like, yeah, we need to have that feeling to understand that need for access on all sides. And I mean, there's 50,000 other volumes that I could speak to that. And also, when he had that night for us to go and see it, there was also a visual access component for anybody who was blind, or was working with visual impairments, I believe is the right term, and also or low vision. I'm gonna call myself in there. I don't remember the term offhand, and also feel free to correct me. So there was someone who was giving descriptive audio a couple rows up. And as an ADHD autistic person, I'm hearing that and I'm engaging the play and I'm getting distracted by hearing that. And also, what is this space for? Who is this space for? What is the story being told? And in that moment, like, my friend had asked me, and how was that experience working with hearing the audio description while all of this was going on? And I said, well, yeah, it was a little distracting for me, and also that's okay. This night is focused on this, and, like, for me, this space is not about me right now. Like, this space is about, that translation and providing access, with as much access as possible, with what can be supported within this budget, within this time. When there is a day that there can be multiple relaxed performances, as there should be, and as there should be stories that engage that more, so that every night at the theater isn't just different for the story, but for the type of experience that you are engaging, especially if you are working with invisible disabilities, because there is no normal and there is no typical, then maybe you may want to split those days up, so that, this night and this space is about this particular collection of access points. But for right now, with where we are, and with the way that the infrastructure, not with the money we have, but with the way that the infrastructure is currently built, this is okay. Yeah, because the infrastructure needs to be built to support multiple access points, in multiple forms. And the access that is currently available to us, it's not that it's not available, it's that it's not thought of. We don't, like, a lot of folks don't know or realize that it needs to be available. And that's why the infrastructure is not there. So that's a lot of what I'm building with my piece. My piece is called I Can Fly. It is about a late diagnosed autistic woman who uses that recent diagnosis to get closer to her family and friends in the most paradoxical way by setting boundaries with them. It talks a lot about mental and emotional labor and what is involved with accommodations, and how accommodations are not just necessary within the workplace, but in our homes and in our families and our communities, and how we've technically already built that in certain ways, and how we can really not just have that as an inherent talent that you can't teach talent. Yes, you can. Talent is just a collection of skills that you gained unconsciously, because you needed them to survive up till now, or you engaged them for some amount of survival up until now. And once those skills become conscious, you can grow them. And so the discussion of accommodations and the subtle ways in which we accommodate each other can go from being unconscious and those things that are quirks within the family to actual fully fledged accommodation needs that are open and understood and welcomed and embraced, and sometimes thought of before we even get into the space, because when it comes to our family, like, there's love there and we love each other, and sometimes we want to assume each other's needs before, actually getting into the space. How was that for a TED Talk? Tori Talk.
Yeah, it's funny. I was gonna say, like, you should totally have your own podcast. It'd just be called Tori's TED Talks.
I might get sued for that, but
yeah, you'd have to spell it differently so that it's like Blu-ray or whatever. But this
sorry,
is
yeah. Can I mention one last thing? Just on the autism route, and feel free to we can edit it out however you want it, if you want to use it. Just last thing that I forgot about. So I just want to acknowledge that, like, for me, being out and autistic is there's a certain amount of privilege that I have in that. Because of, like, being white, being straight appearing, being cis, and having the access that I have had. I literally, like, fell into my ADHD diagnosis and my autism diagnosis through doing a study, which then got me diagnosed and then allowed for me to get access to medication in ways that a lot of people don't. And also, there are a lot of studies out there now that are leaning towards disclosure is the best way to gain empathy and accommodations and support, and to be hired. But that's not necessarily the case. There's still a lot of mixed studies on that. And I have had the privilege to be able to go and identify and be like, I'm autistic. And then they go, well, what does that mean? And I say, well, for me, that means blah, blah, blah. And also having access to the education that I have, it means that I hand them a piece of paper and go, this is what this means for me. These are the access supports that I need. And if you're cool with that, then we can work together in a space. And also, there are a lot of hiring situations and a lot of applications that I have done to various theaters that still don't understand what that means, and to various just artistic projects in general that don't understand what that means. And so there has still been, like, that's not to say this is all bright and shiny and happy all the time. There's work to be done, and there's a lot of the time there's a lot of folks that that don't understand what that is, don't understand when they are causing a microaggression, don't know what allism is. I encourage everybody to look up what allism is, because I have been in spaces where it's a lot of folks believe themselves to be very supportive of invisible disabilities and specifically autism, because it's a group of it's predominantly ADHD focused, and most of the folks in the room are ADHD. And that's all well and good, but ADHD isn't autism. And allism, or allist ableism, is specific to anti-autistic ableism. And that is something that still very much exists to this day. And so where I'm at in my journey now is having a lot of conversations with people and helping to educate people on how we can circumvent that, and what that looks like. And I draw a lot of that from the teachings that have been before, and I encourage everybody to check out Sins Invalid, amongst many other groups, and also want to acknowledge that a lot of the teachings on disability justice wouldn't be here without racial justice, without various different justice practices that have given us the language to be able to advocate for ourselves, which is why it's important to not just be in support of disability identities. We need to look at the whole consideration of what is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I just needed to mention that, because if I wasn't acknowledging where a lot of my teachings, where a lot of my experiences come from, I would feel like I'd be doing a disservice. Okay, last small TED Talk. Thank you. Now we can.
I'm gonna say something kind of self-serving here, and to the audience. I'm saying that to the audience. You're my friend, and you're one of the things I just love so much about you. I've only known you for a few months, but I genuinely love how thoughtful you are. And I know a lot of my other autistic friends are like this, and if you find the right topics, like I literally could just sit and listen to you for hours. Which is why we need to hang out more.
Agreed.
But yeah, and there's a lot of stuff that I want to say in response, but I try to keep these episodes focused more on the guest, especially when we go a bit longer. I think with the length, I wanted to give you space and time to speak here, but I think what I'm going to actually do with this one, because we kind of did like 3 individual chunks. So as much as I don't normally edit this show, I think that it's going to make sense for this one to maybe like turn it into 3, like part 1, 2, 3, and do that. I could also put it out as the whole thing as well, but I just think that might make it a little easier for people to engage with.
I could talk for hours, and I could talk for hours about nothing. So like, feel free to edit, and feel free to, that's totally okay.
I like, it's one of those things, like there's some people that I know where I'm like, I literally just want to do like a weekly show with you and just like talk to you about stuff, because like, and I'm like this too, like I'm the one doing the interviewing, and I don't feel comfortable just doing like a monologue podcast by myself. I'm a lot better when I have someone to like kind of bounce off of. Except, if I'm going up on stage and just delivering information, it's a little bit different. But I like, yeah, it's one of those special things. Like not all autistic people kind of do this, but the one quick thing that I will say is, like, you were talking about all the like doing all your own research with the medical stuff, and I have a couple of other friends who've had to go down that road as well. And I remember when I read Tim Ferriss's book, I think it was 4 Hour Body, it's from years back, and he wrote about these different, like, he paid out of his own pocket to get a bunch of different testing done so that he could understand himself better, like physiologically. And he like talked about like, you know, slow twitch and fast twitch muscle fibers and stuff. And like, even though I'm an artist and I'm very creative and I like to like make things, I have always had an interest in like science and how stuff works. And I just didn't go down that path. My sister did. She's got a master's in microbiology. And
Whoa.
yeah. And I was the one that didn't even get a master's in, you know, art because you don't really, I mean, yeah. But I've always been interested in that stuff. And so I like, when you're talking about that stuff, I'm like, if it was easier, like I could just go to my doctor and be like, I'd like to get this test done. And then I'd like to sit down with someone and have them explain this to me so that I can understand it, because I want to understand this stuff. I want to be able to, like, I mean, the problem is like I'm a hypochondriac and I do have a tendency to like, you know, skies falling, you know, I have friends thankfully who can help rein me in with that. But it's like I do want to understand myself better, like mentally, emotionally, identity wise, physically, like everything. And I'm endlessly curious and I love learning and I love sharing what I learn. So when I get to talk to somebody like you're not necessarily like an expert, but you're thoughtful and you're curious and you've done research and you're presenting your experience and you're presenting what you've learned. And I just I'm so happy that I know people like this and this is part of what I love about this show, is that I get to have these conversations and share this information, and hopefully it helps somebody, even if just me. So, with all that said, you've got your show I Can Fly. I'm not sure if you can talk about like when that might be ready for public consumption or if there's anything else that you want to promote right now, but
Yeah, I mean, it's in development right now. Theaters get at me. No, it's in development, and I've been having talks here and there with folks about it. Wow. Blah, blah, blah. And I see now all the ADHD.
Do you live next to a raceway?
Apparently. Yeah. I'm also like I'm writing a bunch of things all the time. I'm performing a bunch of things all the time. And theaters get at me. TV shows get at me. Just, you know, plug. And I'm trying to think of all of the things that are next, and I can't think of anything, of course. But folks can reach out at on my Instagram, G_NITENET. That's G_nightnet.
That link will be in the description. So
cool. And yeah, my autism has presented in a way that I just never I've the social trauma hit me in the good way, where or at least I have healed from the social trauma to that's a much better way of putting it, to assume that a lot of the time my view of the world is not the view of the world. I don't assume that my direct the way that I take in the world and the way that I move through the world isn't, and I'm consistently reminded that it isn't the way that everybody moves through the world. And in some cases that means contextualizing as like, hey, I know I'm a weirdo, but and other times it's, oh, this person just must not know. Okay, that's okay. Like they could have come from 50 different places or experiences, so that they just don't know this thing. I'm not going to assume that they're dumb. And yeah. largely because when I was growing up, a lot of people assumed that I was dumb. And that in and of itself is a very ableist phrase that I try to take out. Um, yeah. So thank you for seeing that in me, and also just thank you for the time, the space. This is really wonderful, and I'm glad that I could be part of it. And I hope there's like all more for you.
No, seriously, I could do like a weekly show with you, and I don't think we'd ever run out of things to talk about. It's like,
Agreed.
hey, so what's going on in your life this week? That's, just an endless.
Love it. Love it.
Because I'm also not more so. I'm spending less so spending my time like learning about medical stuff for my sake of my health as I'm learning about whole new industries and things like aspects of like being self-employed that I haven't really come up against before, and like I'm learning a lot of stuff on the fly, which is cool, but also can be tiring and overwhelming sometimes.
Yeah.
So this is kind of where it gets to be a mixture of fun and educational. um,
Well, don't take all of what I say as rude. I consistently say like everybody look up stuff. Don't take everything I say as this
well,
is the
that's why
way.
I
And this
said you're
is
sharing your
science.
experiences and things that you have learned, and that's not saying that those are facts. That's just you're presenting information. And I think you're very clear about being like second opinions and whatever spirituality works for you. Like you weren't like proselytizing anything, so
Right.
at least I don't think so. But
Cool.
that said, yeah, so with that, that's wonderful. I think as I've been thinking about it, I think it does make a lot of sense to put this into three parts. And um, I will just very quickly, I know I alluded to it that I created my own company that is not really doing much right now because it's summertime, and summertime's just not really a good time for independent events. But Party Mix Events is the current name of my thing. The tagline was playful, creative connection for grown-ups, but it's kind of evolving now to be kind of more like playful, creative, accessible, inclusive connection for grown-ups. So that's a mouthful. Um, and yeah,
Nice.
I also am kind of getting into kind of a bit of coaching and like consulting, but that's still taking shape. So right now, that's kind of the main thing. But my website is lacyartemis.com. I am at Lacey Artemis on all the social media platforms that I'm on, except for Twitter/X because I'm not. I mean, I still have an account there, but I it's retired. I'm not going back for some what I think are obvious reasons. Um, but yeah, that all said, thank you again for tuning in, for listening. I hope that you learned something, and I'm always bad at the endings of these. So until next time, this has been Hat Collecting, the Disability Experience with Victoria Urquhart, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.